Hi, today I want to talk about what could be the most important book of the year. It's the book from Ray Kurzweil, The Singularity is Nearer. So let's unpack why this could be one of the most important books. The reason that it's worth to listen to Ray Kurzweil is because his predictions have a tendency of coming through, and at the same time, his predictions for the future are pretty wild. For example, if his predictions come through, aging will stop in about 10 years and people will go on to live almost forever if they're not killed in accidents. And even more extreme, our brains will start to merge with computers in the 2040s. So when he says a prediction, it is worth to listen, especially if we look at his track record. So for the 1990s, he did predict the explosive growth of the internet and that the impact it would have on communication and entertainment. He predicted that a chess computer would be the world champion in chess before year 2000, and as many know, that came true with Deep Blue beating Kasparov in 97. And then he also, for example, predicted that speech recognition would become advanced enough to be highly accurate in the early zeros. So many of his predictions do come true. He has earlier made some pretty wild predictions. For example, he has now for a long time predicted that both AGI and the Turing test will be passed in 2029. I think most people and experts dismiss this as being totally crazy. And for the 2030s, he's predicted that we'll start to be able to reverse aging, and that in the 2040s, we'll see the singularity where man merges with machine. We'll come more back to the singularity and why that is important. But the thing that's interesting now is that a prediction like AGI and passing the Turing test were something that was predicted that it would either never happen or it would happen in the last part of this century. So now suddenly it seems much more realistic. So the way Ray Kurzweil makes many of these predictions is because he is looking at the laws of accelerating returns. So basically he's very focused on the amount of compute that is possible to make, and you're probably familiar with Moore's law, where you see the computational power, how it's exponential. We see the computational power here. So on an algorithmic path, you can see that it's a straight line, which means it grows exponentially. So more or less Moore's law is that every 18 months, the computer power will double. And with this development in computer power, what he is saying is that the earlier predictions he made in terms of the Turing test being passed in 2029 and singularity, where we merge with computers, being in 2044, 2045, what he is actually saying in his new book is that we are on schedule for this development, which in itself I think is pretty crazy, that you can predict something back in 2010 like this, and now 14 years later you can actually say, well, we're pretty much on track. So it's quite amazing that he's been accurate so far in his predictions. What he's also saying in his book is that if you look at the different developments within AI and compute, we are now getting to the steep part of the curve. So what that means is that now we'll really start to see the impact of what AI can do in our society. And I think this is pretty spot on as well. I think since early 2023 and 2024 now, we are really starting to see what large language models can do. So what he's also saying is that today we are closer to superhuman AI, artificial super intelligence, than we are to 2012. So what he means by that is 2012 is 12 years ago, and we'll have AI super intelligence within the next 12 years. So this is not AGI, this is probably beyond what we talk about when we talk about AGI, because superintelligence is normally defined as an artificial intelligence that is exceeding all human intelligence combined. So what he's predicting within the 2020s is that we will start to interact with AI in a way where the AI seems convincingly human. And I think we're already seeing this with, for example, Claude, Sonnet, or we're seeing it with ChatGPT-4, where we are aware that we are talking or communicating with an AI, but it's getting more and more to actually more and more difficult to tell the difference between communicating with an AI and communicating with a person. We're also starting to see simple brain-computer interfaces. We, for example, saw this with Elon Musk's technology. And we're also starting to see how biotech will start to cure more and more diseases, and there's a lot of talk about longevity at the moment. We've just seen, for example, some gene therapy actually showing promising results, so he's also spot on with this. And also in the 2020s, what he anticipates is that many workers will start to feel the sting of economic disruption. So what he's basically saying here is that AI will automate at a very quick pace, which will mean that there will be quite a lot of unemployment in the later 2020s as a result of AI and later AGI. And further, he also predicts that this will be a dangerous decade in terms of deliberate misuse of these new capabilities within AI. So, for example, fake news. So what he's saying, when we move a little bit further into the future, the 2030s, we will start to see self-improving AIs. So what that means is we'll start to see the feedback loop where AI becomes so advanced that it can actually improve on itself. And this moment could be very important because that could accelerate the whole development of how quickly AI actually develops. And then in 2045, we're going to see the singularity where it will be like an explosion of intelligence, and also the point in time where humans elevate ourselves to the next level. And this is probably the element that would be most difficult to imagine. I think that most people will reject, that will actually take a further step, just like we developed potentially from monkeys to humans, that we will take a similar step where we are going to develop into something more than humans, where we will simply upgrade our neostack our neurostack in the brain to reach a new level of intelligence. In his book, he also says that while there will be issues with, for example, unemployment, there's a lot of reason for optimism, because in general, artificial intelligence will bring with it a lot of abundance. So even if we see unemployment, this might actually mean that it will free up time and resources to people to do something they find more meaningful than work, and at the same time, AI will increase the productivity so much that everybody will have covered their need for a nice place to live, healthy food to eat, entertainment, and so on. So basically, what Ray is doing is he's dividing human evolution into 6 different epochs, as he called them. And again, we are now in the 4th epoch, where we are developing artificial intelligence. This 5th one will start once we are able to kind of crack the Turing test, and the 6th one will be when we merge with computers, so the singularity. So talking about the Turing test, so it's just interesting how the expectations of the average experts have actually moved. There used to be consensus that the Turing test would be passed around 2060, and now that consensus is down to around 2026, so only in like 2-3 years. So now Kurzweil's own prediction has gone from considered to be almost crazy to now kind of conservative, with him expecting both the Turing test and AGI at around 2029. So he talks a bit about what are the actual shortcomings of AI and where does it need to improve in order to be able to pass the Turing test. And he says that the 3 issues are mainly the conceptual memory, that it needs to be improved. So in other words, for example, ChatGPT at the moment would forget things that you've told it in earlier conversation. And there's also a limit to the tokens. This is why, for example, that you cannot ask ChatGPT to write a full novel. It could write a chapter of a novel based on your prompt, but it will not write the whole novel. And this is basically because there's a limit to the tokens that can be used in one prompt. It's interesting, however, that the token price has been reduced by 96% from 22 to 23. So in all likelihood, in 2029, we'll have such an abundance of tokens that you can ask ChatGPT or another tool like Claude to write you a full novel with one prompt. The other issue of AI as it is today is that it still struggles to some extent with what we can call common sense, which is about how the real world works and how to interpret that. So for example, if you see a living room that is in a big mess and you see a small puppy in the picture as well, common sense would be to connect the two and say, okay, there's a puppy and there's a lot of mess in the living room, so it's probably the puppy who's guilty of making this mess. Those deductions are still hard for AI to do, but we're getting there as well. And the final part would be like the nuances of social interaction. That also takes a while for artificial intelligence to get right. But in general, Kurzweil is very optimistic that these will be relatively simple to overcome. And again, he's here looking at the doubling times of how to train artificial intelligence, which is quite a lot faster than Moore's law. So in terms of flops, if you look at the machine learning systems over time, it's actually doubling every 5.7 months. So this is why he still believes we are on track to get to AGI or even superintelligence by the end of this decade. He also explains that by the time an AI can actually pass the Turing test, and let's just try to define what is the Turing test. So the way Ray sets up the rules for a Turing test is that he says that a person who really understands AI would be able to have like a longer conversation with an AI, say for 30 minutes or an hour, testing it on a lot of different areas to see if we can actually tell whether it's an AI or whether it's a real human, and that person will not be able to tell that. So it's actually a more demanding test than the old Turing test. But the reason it is so hard to get to that level is we're talking about general intelligence. So for example, in some areas like chess, AI way exceeds what a human can do today. But that's because the rules of winning and losing in chess are very clear cut. So you can basically have a computer, an AI playing itself and getting better and better and better. Other skills, for example, understanding why one legal battle is won and why another one is lost, and how much impact the lawyer in the cases actually had, is a lot less clear cut. Was it the lawyer who made one person win the case and the way he argued, or was it the actual laws, or was it the bias of the jury, or was it the judge? There are so many more elements. So training on data sets like this and then understanding why a certain result happened is a lot more challenging. It's also, I think, important to discuss. So we're talking about AGI, ASI, we're talking about the Turing tests. So these may not be the most important parameters when we actually evaluate how capable AGI is. So in my opinion, what's important with AI is how much will it actually contribute to the abundance and the welfare that we humans have, and to be able to, you could say, cheat people into thinking that an AI is actually a human may not be a goal in itself. However, capable models of superintelligence can definitely be a goal in itself, because that AI could solve very complex problems like slowing down aging or even curing aging. It could help us solve cancer, how to cure cancer, for example, and other dangerous diseases. So while you could say that the Turing test is a good measure for how far we are, it may not be the best measure for how much value AI actually adds to a society. Another more important point is actually how skilled AI is at programming, and even more importantly, how skilled AI is becoming at programming to improve itself. Because the second AI becomes capable of improving itself, we will enter what is called the feedback loop, where AI intelligence is probably going to double a lot faster than we're seeing right now, which can be hard to imagine because we're already looking at doubling times between like 4 and 5 months, which means that for every 4 and 5 months, AI's compute is doubling. So when we enter the feedback loop, this could maybe come down to 1 or 2 months or even less for the AI's capabilities to double. So that might actually be a more interesting point in time to keep a lookout for. Kurzweil doesn't describe this exactly when this will happen, but instead he talks about the feedback loop as a soft takeoff or as a hard takeoff, where a hard takeoff would mean that once AI understands how to improve itself, well, things actually almost go crazy. The impact is instantaneous and it will be an intelligence explosion, while a softer takeoff would be a more gradual process of self-improvement that would be faster than what humans can do, but not like an explosion. Anyway, when this point in time happens, sometime in the 2030s, according to Kurzweil, we will then accelerate towards a situation where we solve aging and we solve most diseases we have. So this actually means if we look at when will we get artificial intelligence at a human level, well, we're actually pretty close. In many ways, you can say that Claude or ChatGPT actually exceeds human intelligence. For example, if you give them an intelligence test or test to enter a college, for example, they do quite a lot better than the average student already. And when we talk about chess, it far exceeds any human capability. So you can say in many ways we're there where you can compare the impact, but in a few years we'll be in a place where it can match our intelligence where it is weakest, but it will far exceed our intelligence where AI has its strong points. AI is probably superior even to a person in front of a computer Googling. I mean, I think ChatGPT or Gemini would be quicker at getting accurate answers than a human Googling result. Another really important point from Kurzweil's book is that we can all expect to experience this. We can almost all expect to experience both AGI, ASI, and the singularity. He's pretty much stating that if you are less than 80 years old and that you are in good health, the aging process will slow down, give you potentially another 20 years. So you will be able to see this intelligence explosion and how people will kind of develop into the next level of humans. And of course, then again, once you get to that level, we will probably have rejuvenation therapies. So the important point here is he's basically saying if you can just stay alive like for the next 5 to 10 years, you might be able to actually live almost indefinitely. He also explains that when we actually get to the point where an AI passes the Turing test, in most areas, the AI will actually have to make itself dumber to pass the Turing test, because in so many areas, the AI will have superhuman intelligence. So in the Turing test, it will expose itself that it's an AI by being too clever. So once we have an AI that can pass the Turing test, it will need the skill to understand where it needs to act a little bit dumber to actually get down to the level of human intelligence. And again, looking a bit further into the future, Ray Kurzweil is very interested in how humans will merge with computers. And I think this will probably be the area where most people are saying, well, this is not happening. I'm not getting like an invasive neuralink into my brain to improve my intelligence. And he's actually not suggesting that. He's suggesting that we are already improving our intelligence with things like smartphones, and that there will be non-invasive ways of actually expanding our neocortex stack, kind of bit by bit, until we become much more intelligent than we are right now. So one of the ways he describes this is that we will be able to, in a harmless way, inject people with nanoscale electrodes that will be inserted in the bloodstream, or you can just grip it on your hair basically, and it will enter your brain and your bloodstream, and in that way you will be expanding your neocortex to take you to the next level of intelligence. Again, I think this is where most people say, I'm not doing it, this is not going to happen. But then again, it would have been pretty hard to understand 25 years ago, the impact and the way we use our phones today. So who knows? I think the major point here, he will say, is that it will be completely safe, and it will not cause any pain at all, and it will be a non-invasive procedure. So he's basically comparing this to when we get to the 2040s, that this upgrade and expanding our neocortex will be a leap, like taking a brain from a monkey state to a human state. So certainly we'll be able to see and understand conversations and problems after this happens that we've not been able to understand at all before. A little bit like if you considered showing a monkey an action movie. It might understand some of the action, but it would probably not understand the dialogue. And the same would probably be true if you took an average human and explained something extremely complex in terms of gene therapy, for example. But with the upgrade, certainly you would understand all the elements of how we need to manipulate genes, for example, to make sure that we reverse aging. So these were some of the most important points in Kurzweil's book, but this is just part one. I'll be back with part two with the main takeaways from his book. Thanks for watching.